1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
All right, good morning. Go ahead and start off. I want to start by introducing Dr. Jose Morey. Dr. Morey is a leader in exponential technologies innovations by leading multidisciplinary teams that sit at the epicenter of genetic intelligence, biotechnology, precision medicine, AI, and aerospace. He is the Chief Medical Innovation Officer for Liberty Biosecurity, was associated with Chief Health Officer for IBM Watson Health, is Chief Innovation Officer for the Hyperloop Transportation Technologies, and is the Medical Technology and Artificial Intelligence Advisor for NASA ITEC, which is an incubator created to identify and develop novel biotechnology to meet the 2030 Mars mission's objectives and deep space colonization. So he has a lot to talk to us about today. So without further ado, Dr. Morey.
Thank you. We live in a time of magic. We live in a time of dreams. If you think about technology today, all the things we can do, all the things we can imagine are actually practical today. If you think about the technologies that we have today, they are akin to magic. You'd have to go, if you brought someone 20, 30 years to today, 50 years, 100 years, that's what they would see. Think about what we can do. We're having people talk about developing colonies on Mars, Europa. People are talking about mining asteroids. In our daily lives, we have artificial intelligence that tells us what to watch, who to date, how to order food. In healthcare soon, we're already having it help us diagnose and treat patients. Whether it's the Hyperloop, whether it's blockchain, whether it's 3D printing, additive manufacturing, these are things that we are actually doing today. I mean, people are talking about quantum teleportation and actually doing it. This isn't science fiction anymore. The things that we are doing aren't just relegated to books, to Asimov, to Jules Verne. We are living it today. But the real magic of technology is not how it can make us superhuman, how it can cause us to travel faster than light or teleport instantaneously. No. The real magic is how technology brings people together. See, technology has a very unique ability to be able to bring out that childlike wonder in all of us, that inner child that resides in you, regardless of how old you are. That when you see something that's so cool and so advanced that it's almost akin to magic. It brings people together, regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of their geopolitical status, ethnicity, orientation. If you see something that's so cool, that it makes you stop. And it makes you forget everything else. And someone that you have had fights with, someone that you disagreed with, regardless of the reason, you can both agree that this is amazing. That's the beauty of technology, that it brings people together. And we're going to need it. We're going to need to rely on that magic, the ability to bring us together, because we are going to be working in the future, us as a civilization, on things much bigger than ourselves, that are going to require the ability to work across the aisle, to work with those that you disagree with, to do things like reach other planets, to colonize other planets. Those things are needed today. We're going to have to do them for a myriad of obstacles. The world is facing a lot of challenges, and we need to become a multiplanetary species. My father is from the Dominican Republic. He grew up in a small town called Iwais. If you guys, anybody been to the Dominican Republic before? Maybe been to Punta Cana? No? Well, you definitely should go. One person. Two. It's a great island. Great island. He grew up, though, in a really small town between Santo Domingo and Punta Cana, right in the middle. Small barrio in Dominican Republic. And he used to tell me a story about he still remembers the time when the rich family in the neighborhood bought their first TV. He grew up in the mid-1900s. And he said that in the evenings, when they would bring it out, they would put it on the porch, and they would turn it on. You could feel it kind of like the hot, humid Caribbean nights, everyone kind of huddled together. It would bring out the entire crowd of the neighborhood to watch this amazing piece of technology. It brought people together. And he said that regardless if you had an issue with someone, there was a long-standing thing, someone harmed someone, someone made somebody mad, dated somebody else's girlfriend or whatever issues you had, whatever disagreements you may have had with that individual, it would bring people together because it was so cool. It was so amazing. That's what technology can do. The Apollo missions. When we first went to the moon, when we landed a human for the first time on the moon and took that first step, at that very moment, the whole world was watching. At that very moment, the whole world was brought together through technology. The interesting thing is that it's at that very moment in time when technology itself had brought us the farthest point we had ever been from each other. At that farthest moment, when we were physically apart, technology and science had a way to awe us, all of us, and bring us together and say, that's amazing. Look at what humanity can do when they do something together. Technology allowed us to see, who has seen this picture before, familiar with this picture? A couple of you. This is called, anybody know what it's called, the term of it? It's Earthrise. It's the first time that we had ever been able to see the Earth rise as opposed to a sunrise. Because we had people and technology on a different planet, or on the moon. And in that moment, technology allowed us, humanity, to see that pale blue dot. That pale blue dot in which everyone we have ever known, everyone who we have ever loved, has lived. Technology allowed us to see ourselves for the first time in a way that we had never been able to see ourselves. How we were one planet. A planet with no boundaries. Who has seen this? Who knows what this is by show of hands? What is it?
Black hole.
It's a black hole. This is the first image of a black hole. We had theorized it. Mathematically, we knew they existed, but we had never actually physically seen one. The actual act of creating this image brought people together. It required a multidisciplinary team across several continents, from Hawaii to Europe to Antarctica, South America. Things and people that for different reasons aren't getting along right now. Politics, economics, science, technology was able to bring them together to work on something bigger than themselves. This came out just a few months ago when we did this. We did this. And when this came out, we live in a world right now that's very interesting. We live in a Twitterverse that's constantly changing. People are always fighting for different reasons. There's so many reasons why we have to disagree with each other, whether it's income inequality, whether it's climate change, whether it's religion, politics. And that's constantly going 24/7. And yet this came out in the middle of all that just a few months ago. And this was spread over every major news network all day, every major newspaper, digital format. This technology, this moment, awe-inspired. And for that one single moment, everything else went silent. everyone was in awe of this, of science, technology, bringing us together in a moment when everything else was in disarray. In our own lives, we experience this too. By a show of hands, how many of you at one point, whatever age, saw something that was so cool that you're like, that's really awesome. Like, I need to buy that, or I want that, or how the heck did they even do that? By a show of hands, who has had that experience? Look around. Everyone has their hands up. You in the front. What did you raise your hand?
Yeah.
What was that experience? What did you think? What was the experience that you had?
I don't really remember, but I feel like I have had it.
Okay. Who remembers exactly? Colin.
I remember it was called the Ginger, which was what the Segways were called before. I don't know if you remember, the Segways are like a two-wheel, like it balances you, but they were called the Ginger before, like late 90s or maybe early 2000s. When I saw that, wow, that's insane. You can like go somewhere on a two-wheel system, just lean forward, lean back. So.
Who knows what the Segway is that he's talking about? Who thought it was cool? Colin, do you know this guy over here with the tie? Do you know him?
Yeah.
All right. Well, did you know that he liked the Segway too, or he thought that it was cool?
Nope.
There you go. Already a connection right now. Now you guys can go home, have a beer, and talk about Segways all night long. No, but that's just another example. And there's plenty more that we could go through if we talk to each individual here. And that's the thing. You guys go out. You're all from different backgrounds. You're all from different thought processes, different incomes, different religions, ethnic groups. And you go out into the world and you can come together around cool technology, whether it's a Segway, whether it's a black hole, Game Boy, Atari, whatever it is that you like. Those are really old. But that's the magic of technology. Hyperloop, I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for them. I have the unique opportunity to work with really smart people all the time. Who has heard of the Hyperloop or knows what it is? Awesome. So for those who don't know what it is, for the other half, it's not actually a new technology. It's something that was reinvigorated into our dialect or into the human vernacular. It started again, or reinvigorated again, about 6 years ago by Elon Musk, who's CEO of Tesla and SpaceX. He had this concept to do, essentially, it's capsule travel or magnetic levitation inside a vacuum. The vacuum, it's partial vacuum, so you're in a tube. That way you remove all resistance and you can go really fast. The concept is that this will be the mass transit or the fifth mode of transportation in the future. And we're already developing these systems all over the world. UAE, China. This kind of system, this technology, this is what technology can do. And the fact that this will change the way we live. This will bring people together and make countries into neighborhoods. Allow people to really cross-pollinate and talk with each other. And not be so afraid of someone that looks or lives in a different way than you. That's how technology can bring people together. At NASA ITEC, I serve as the Medical Technology and Artificial Intelligence Advisor. ITEC was started during the previous administration for the purpose of being able to identify the obstacles that we have to reach and colonize deep space, starting with the 2030s Mars missions. So we sit, myself and other subject matter experts, with the CTOs across the region, all over NASA, and we identify what those technology gaps are. And then we work with startups and with established companies to be able to solve those solutions. We create amazing technologies together to help us be able to reach Mars, to get off of just this one planet, and to help us become a multi-planetary species. But then also, the things that we develop, we look to have terrestrial use as well, to be able to benefit what we can do for humanity here. And these are the practical steps that we are taking, using technology that brings people together, that can awe-inspire here on Earth, but it can also take us to other planets. Things like Lumia, one of our current and most interesting, in my opinion, recent graduates from the program. Lumia is making smart sensor technology, so smart textiles. These are essentially, if you think of how your Apple iPhone now attached to your wristwatch, can actually look and regulate your heart or evaluate your heart rate. This can do the same thing, but with all sorts of smart textiles. It can also sense if you're cold or hot, and it can change the temperature of your clothing to be able to ameliorate for what it senses. Imagine if you have a purse that if you're in a dark room, you open up the purse and you can actually have the textile itself turn on so you can see inside your purse, or use your purse as a flashlight. These are the kinds of technologies that we're creating. This is the kind of cool stuff that you can do when you work together. We're actually looking to miniaturize MRIs. We're all radiologists here, right? You're all the aspiring young rads. Myself, I'm a radiologist as well. One of the rate-limiting steps that we have when we go to space is weight restrictions. You have to take everything from here and bring it up. You don't actually manufacture in space yet. So what we're looking is how do we miniaturize that? So we're working with different technologies to actually make micro MRIs to be able to do this on a nano scale almost. Working with nanotechnology physically to be able to transport information inside the body, whether you're taking information to the brain or other cell, or actually transporting just medical technology to a direct location. We're working with different robotic centers to actually create humanoid robots that can assist us in space exploration, that can go to places and do things that we can't normally do. But these are also going to be used here on Earth for doing things that we as humans can't do, such as going to a catastrophic event. Think of Fukushima, being able to send robotics to do that. The AstroB Robot. The AstroB Robot was developed at NASA Ames, where I'm going actually tonight after I get out of this talk. It's essentially, think of a air-powered or floating R2-D2. It's in the ISS right now, and there's 3 versions of it. And the AstroB Robot actually helps you, and it's a helper. It goes around and finds equipment for you, helps you carry things, and is essentially just an assistant. These are the things we're developing. Sorry, the sound's a little bit high, but we're actually working on advanced biomechatronics, where you can actually control robots with your brain. That headset that I'm wearing right there allows me to try to control those robots. My son always makes fun of me over this, because depending on the different waves that you send out with your head, you can actually cause the robot to turn or cause the robot to move forward and back. I didn't do an excellent job. That's why he makes fun of me. But in my defense, that lady wouldn't stop talking to me. Artificial intelligence is one of my major backgrounds. After radiology, I started working in AI for IBM Watson. Did that for several years. And at ITEC, we're using some of that machine learning expertise, not just of myself, but others within NASA, to create fully autonomous surgical units. And this isn't just assistive units to augment what we naturally do. This is fully autonomous from start to finish. The concept is, if you are in space or something similar to space, think of a submarine or other kind of isolated location, you need something to be able to diagnose and treat from start to finish. That's what we're trying to get to. The surgical unit on the right is actually from a movie. If you've seen it before, it's one of the Aliens movies. But that's essentially what we're trying to get to. The paper on your left, that was a paper that we published together regarding the research that we're doing. And this isn't science fiction. It's already in play. We've been developing with some folks out of Ohio. In animal studies, the robot can actually, from start to finish, do full appendectomy, full cholecystectomy, and full small bowel anastomosis. And that's opening, performing the procedure, and then closing up. But it's not just, technology is not just mechanical. That's not the only things that we work on. That's amazing. That's moving us forward. Technology can also be biologic. Working with Liberty Biosecurity, I'm the Chief Medical Innovation Officer, we're working with NASA to actually develop novel biology from extremophiles, things that we either experiment on the ISS or that we find in extreme conditions here on Earth. NASA actually has a planetary protection program. So there's actually a planetary protection officer, which in my opinion is the coolest title you can possibly have. And they're based out of JPL. They work with this extreme bacteria, extreme viruses, and we're looking to reproduce some of the enzymatic things that they do for a myriad of reasons. The first one that you saw previously, we're developing something that can destroy biofilms. Biofilms, obviously, very important, very big issue when it comes to space exploration, when it comes into the air conditioning ducts and water filtration. On Earth, biofilms are very important from a healthcare perspective. Biofilms are in every chronic infection. You think of chronic wounds like DFUs or burns. You think of chronic TB or multi-resistant TB. It's really all biofilm generated. You think of nosocomial infections. Everything that happens from an orthopedic procedure, or who's going to do IR? There's a couple of IR folks out there that are interested in IR. Show hands. 5, 6 maybe. Well, even if you don't do IR, if you do general IR, which all of us will have to do even if you're in a practice unless you're super subspecialized, and you leave a line in, anything that's a line, whether it's a Foley catheter or a central line, nosocomial infections, hospital-acquired infections come from biofilm. So this can eliminate that problem. Also working with Metro Biotech and Liberty on an anti-radiation medication. This is actually coming from an anti-aging drug that we're developing. We have partnerships at Harvard labs, and we're developing this anti-aging drug that reduces your molecular age by 30%. So imagine you're 50, but you actually have the biology and the physiology of a 35-year-old. We're in human trials now. Hopefully we'll start phase 2 trials next year. But as a side effect, while we were doing our animal studies, we found that it can actually mitigate radiation effects. For deep space exploration, obviously this is huge because radiation is something that affects us negatively. From a terrestrial use, we're all radiologists. What's the number one thing we're always trying to do? Minimize radiation. ACR, first do no harm, comes from the oath, but then the ACR is image wisely, image gently. These are all things that we're trying to do, micromillisievert types of radiation. Imagine if we had a pill that we gave our patients that we didn't have to worry about that. You could scan and scan and scan, and then this drug would actually clean up the radiation, the DNA damage. These are the kind of things that we are actually doing right now. The why. Why? The reason why is because we need to get off the planet. We need to have a secondary home, multiple homes. We need to expand the human species to propitiate it beyond just that one pale blue dot. This is something that our future generations will be experiencing. Perhaps not our children, but perhaps our children's children, or perhaps their children. Sights and sound from a different planet. You're listening to Martian Wind. These are the kind of things that future generations will be experiencing. But to get there, we have to work on things bigger than ourselves. We have to find ways to come together as technology can bring us together to be able to get humanity to this point. New places, new frontiers, new adventures.
For all its material advantages, the sedentary life has left us edgy, unfulfilled. Even after 400 generations in villages and cities, we haven't forgotten. The open road still softly calls, like a nearly forgotten song of childhood. We invest far-off places with a certain romance. The appeal, I suspect, has been meticulously crafted by natural selection as an essential element in our survival. Long summers, mild mild winters, rich harvests, plentiful game. None of them last forever. Your own life, or your band's, or even your species might be owed to a restless few, drawn by a craving they can hardly articulate or understand, to undiscovered lands and new worlds. Moby Dick spoke for wanderers in all epochs and meridians. He said, I am tormented with an everlasting itch for things remote. I love to sail forbidden seas.
We live in a time of magic. We live in a time of dreams. And we need to focus on the magic of technology that brings people together to make sure that we are making this world a better place. And not just this one, but the next one as well. Thank you very much. Questions. They don't have to be about technology. They can be about radiology. Yeah.
Quick question.
Sure.
What do you think is going to be the first, either, I shouldn't say full, but full AI or partial AI implementation in medicine? Is it going to be in radiology? Is it going to be more in diagnostic and internal medicine? Where do you see the first actual commercial product coming out of it?
Well, there's already tons of commercial products. If you look from 2014 to today, there is about, I want to say 57 AI applications that are already FDA approved and even more that are CE approved that are commercial products that are available on the market. Radiology alone has about, I want to say 33% of that is primarily radiology. And the reason artificial intelligence is so popular, particularly in radiology, is because we have the data, right? All our data is digitized. So machine learning, when you're actually going to take advantage of neural networks, has to have enough data to become viable to be able to train. That's why in radiology it's very common. And also, as radiologists, we have been leading the field in informatics more so than other specialties. So there's tons already out there. I think the ones that you're going to start seeing more often than not is things that improve efficiencies, or even from an administrator's perspective, can allocate resources and people power. So being able to evaluate or predict when you're going to have inflows and outflows of patients, be able to predict which patients will get sepsis. There's a project called Suspect Sepsis, already commercial application, that people use to be able to predetermine who's most likely to develop sepsis and to be able to hopefully intervene. Looking at smart technologies for EER, so you can have people and move people up on the list who have a most likely diagnosis of a fracture or pneumonia. Intracranial hemorrhage applications are already out there. Strokes are already out there. So having those things that move people up and down on the priority list, even if you're an ED or whether you're in an outpatient facility, that stuff is already out there. if you look at how much money is being thrown in by private equity or venture capitalists into this field, it's astronomical, and it keeps going higher and higher. AI in healthcare is a real thing, and it's already commercially available, and it will be the physicians and the healthcare organizations that leverage AI that will progress. AI won't ever completely eliminate us, but the physicians that don't use AI will be eliminated by those that do.
What is the drug, the radiation drug called that you mentioned?
So it's not commercially available. It's only in research. So it doesn't have a trade name. Yeah, so if you look up Metro Biotech, you can look up what they're doing, but you're not going to find what this particular drug in there, or how we're using this application. For a lot of reasons. Next question. Yeah.
So I think in the past, medicine has been a little slow at adapting new technologies, and maybe still going on today. Do you have any ideas on how we as future physicians can kind of help integrate that faster, technology faster into medicine?
Get into positions of power quickly. That's the key. I mean, look, medicine has been patriarchal since the advent of medicine. It's an unfortunate thing. It's something that I had to go through, something that you are going through now. You have to break cycles. It's like anything else that's a negative cycle. It has to be broken. So you have to have people that are progressively minded, that are looking to that are looking to make change and make rapid change. You have to buck the system, and you have to break the system and make it over again. It's not easy, but your generation, I'm full. I mean, I live in a time of magic, and I'm very excited about everything that's going on in technology and in healthcare and just in the world today when it comes to technology, when it comes to when you talk to individual people. Politics, everything aside, that's a reality, and that's things that we have to deal with. But if you really talk to people and you really see what's going on and you put away kind of just a lot of the negative stuff that's out there, it's a really cool time, and you can do so much. You can do so much for your patients. You can do so much for your healthcare systems, for your colleagues, for your kids. It's a really amazing time to be alive. But it's going to be you that changes it. Sir?
Could you describe maybe how you went from some clinical medicine to some of these more like kind of farther business kind of endeavors?
Yeah, it's not overnight. It definitely it's a journey, and you don't really see how you get there sometimes. You just kind of go in. I can give you some general talks or general thoughts on it. Essentially, it started. I didn't like research at all. I hated research. I did some stem cell research when I was in med school, but it really wasn't my thing. I just wanted to do private practice radiology. That's all I really envisioned I would ever do. Make a good living, have a good life, and that's it. When I was in residency, though, I went to a hybrid program similar to like EVMS, where it's half academic, half private. And we had some folks that were very heavy into research, to the point that one particular individual that did almost no clinical work, and that just annoyed all of us, but me in particular, because if they did no clinical work, someone else had to do that work. And you'll have them. You have the students that work hard, those that don't, and you'll have it in residency too. But I went out of my way to prove that you can actually do academic research and still actually do work. It was just the person was lazy. And I kind of fell in love with certain research. I found that I actually enjoyed quality improvement projects, to be able to not basic science research, but doing things that actually had an impact, either on my own workday, on my colleagues' workday, or on my patients. That was cool, and that's where I saw, this is real world research. And then I started looking around for fellowships that focused on real world clinical impacts, and I loved technology at the time anyways, but I found entrepreneurship is really what I was into. Entrepreneurship it's really research. You find a pain point, like you have a pencil but no eraser. Wow, wouldn't it be amazing if someone developed an eraser? You do the research, how to make an eraser, how to make rubber, you create an eraser, you're a multimillionaire because you just solved your own problem. That's it. So I went to Penn. Penn obviously has a big business school, Wharton, which everybody should know, and I started doing a lot of entrepreneurship work there. And that's kind of how it started cascading after that. I went into private practice and started doing consulting in informatics, because most of my research at Penn ended up being informatics quality improvement projects, to try to figure out, what physicians work better, what hours, do they have a higher morbidity and mortality with certain types of patients, things like that to help admin. So I started doing that as a consultancy on the side, started creating applications for hospitals that were used and utilized for different purposes. IBM saw some of the research I did. IBM asked me to come work for them on Watson, 8 years ago now, 9 years ago. Worked for IBM for 5 or 6 years as a contractor while I was doing clinical work. Then I went full-time for IBM, took over their associate chief health officer position, so I was over the R&D for all of Watson Health, from the strategy and implications of it. And then once I was in that Silicon Valley kind of mode, it's the same thing. Like if I asked everybody here, how many medical students do you know? Hundreds, right? That's your network. How many venture capitalists do you know? Maybe one of you knows something. How many billionaires do you know? Maybe one, maybe. But once you start working in those cycles, it's just a new network. It's the same skill sets that you're doing. The skill sets that you're learning now, it's just applied to something else. That's all it is. It's just a new challenge. And when you go, the most important thing is communication, your interpersonal skills, that will take you beyond anywhere else. How smart you are will get you in the door. How kind you are will keep you there. So that was kind of the stair-step progression. And I tend to say yes to almost any opportunity, big or small. I don't think anything's below me. If you give me the opportunity to be a part of an amazing project and I have to take out the trash, I will take out your trash. I will be the best trash taker outer you have ever seen. That's just the mentality I have. So you give me an inch, I'm gonna squeeze it for all it's worth. So any opportunity you get, go for it. If you get the opportunity to work with someone that's doing 3D printing, someone that's doing alternative medicine, whatever it is that inspires you, follow it. And then 10 years from now, you're gonna turn around and be like, how did I get here? So that's kind of a nutshell of my journey. Sorry?
I have kind of like an ethical issue that I've kind of dealt with. So
sure.
Before coming to med school, I worked in similar sort of like advancement of technology, 3D bioprinting for human organs, things like that. Things that I find very cool.
Yeah.
But my ethical dilemma is we're putting all this money and effort and brain power into solving the problems of the future, but there's so many issues that we already have the tools to solve that no one's focusing on just because those problems aren't sexy.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that?
You have to find a coalition of the willing to deal with that. Usually, ideally, some sort of public-private partnership is important, because that's the amazing thing about an organization like NASA or the federal government. As much as we all kind of down on any federal government, obviously there's abuses of power and things of that nature, but when you have an entity that has no profit motivation, that is just doing things to do the right thing, like NASA is just doing, NASA doesn't make any money from intellectual property. Any one of us can get an IP for NASA, a license, a patent from NASA for a year for free to do whatever you want to do. Well, technically you have to fill out paperwork, say you're going to develop it, but because they're not making money from that perspective. They're trying to work on things bigger than themselves. The projects you're talking about are things bigger than yourself, but it's immediate. So trying to work with a public-private partnership is one route that I would take. The other route is that there are nonprofits out there that are doing very similar things. One I can think of right now is AI Fund. AI Fund was started by Andrew Yang, who, if you guys are in the AI circles, he was at Google DeepMind, and then he was also at Beidou. He was the chief scientist, and now he's doing a nonprofit that's focusing on developing artificial intelligence platforms to teach AI to underserved areas, to teach computer science to the developing world. So although that might not be maybe a project you're thinking about, maybe you're thinking about something more granular or more visceral, like food or clothing or shelter, very basic things. But there are people out there that are trying to go out to the developing world and that are not looking to make a buck. They're looking to make a difference. There's an old adage that you can still do good by doing well, or do well by doing good. So there are people that are doing positive things in the world. Some make money, some don't make money, but the motivation is the same. They're just trying to do better. You think of organizations like the Gates Foundation. This is something that I didn't know until probably a year ago when I started working with them. They're actually the largest pharmaceutical manufacturer in the world, the Gates Foundation. It's not AstraZeneca, it's not GSK, it's not J&J. It's the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Why? Because they're pouring a lot of money. You can argue back of, well, how did they make that money? But they're pouring a lot of money into nonprofit work and trying to now make the world a better place, not to make a buck. They're looking to, change malaria, eradicate TB, things that are real world, very visceral, especially outside of the U.S. So there are people out there, either you look for a PPP or you work with some sort of technology nonprofit that are working on the things that you're looking. There are people doing it. But you're absolutely right. That's sometimes we, especially in the Valley or anything else that's working with private equity or VC, you can get so mesmerized by 10, 20 years down the line that you don't focus on the today. But there are people out there. You can find them. Yes?
If there were to be mass colonization that you discussed of like another planet, how do you see us avoiding to like further the social inequality that already exists? Because in my mind, you would have very wealthy people going and then leaving, taking like the money kind of with them, and leaving like billions of people that would have no idea what that is.
Yeah, it's a complex question. It's a good question. I'll take an example here from Earth first. The Hyperloop technology is a technology that people are looking to develop, and not to be for the rich. They're looking to commercialize and make income from other aspects. There are other ways to make money, right? Google gives everything out for free. Facebook gives everything out for free, no matter how rich you are, no matter what your background is. They're not looking to charge you for the use of their software. Now, you can argue they charge other ways, but the actual utility of it is free. And I think that you're going to get more and more companies like that, and more endeavors that are like that, where people aren't actually, the actual use, the actual utility of it is free. There'll be other ways that are commercialized. And I think, going back to the public-private partnerships, that's why you have to have the federal government involved as well, to make sure that the economies of scale is something that reaches everyone and not just some people. Because we do have income inequality that are big issues, specifically in healthcare a lot. People going on to only physicians that they can get to that no one else can get to because they don't, or maybe they don't even have insurance coverage, or certain medications that cost $100,000 per medication that only certain people can get. So it's something that is a reality in all our lives. It could potentially be a reality here as well, but that's why we have to find ways, such as working with federal governments, to be able to reduce those costs. That's how you would eventually do it, in my opinion. But every futuristic thing, whether it's AI, think of nuclear power. Nuclear power is amazing. It's the cleanest form of energy that we have. However, people can use nuclear power for nefarious acts. Artificial intelligence is amazing. Gene editing is amazing. However, people can use it for nefarious acts. You can always use any piece of technology or any advancement to help only a few people, or to use it in a very negative way. But it takes concerted effort from all of us to have conversations, to have questions like this, to talk, how do we get there? One of the interesting things that I tend to think about a lot is a lot of the mind games or ethics games that in colleges or in academic centers were just purely academic back in the day. Like, back in the day, you would set up a scenario, right, where, all right, you have a car, and you're driving this car, and you lose control, and you have two options, only two, unfortunately. You veer to the left, and you take out a young family of four. You veer to the right, and you take out an old folks' home or a bus full of elderly people, kind of thing. Those were just mind games. Those were just ethical problems that we would have banter and debate over in a setting like this. Today, those aren't just banter. It's not just theoretical. We are coding machines to make these decisions. We're actually writing this into hardware. So it's interesting that ethicists and philosophers and religious folks are the ones that are really needed more so now than ever in technology because of questions like what you're saying. How do we make sure that we don't lose sight of humanity when we are so caught up in just the technology of it? And that's one of the purposes of what I tried to discuss, of how technology is at the core really about the human condition and about trying to bring people together, and looking at kind of the more positive lights of technology. But yes, there are definitely negative things that have to be addressed as well.
You guys are looking at applicants. What qualifications are you looking for them to join the team?
So it depends on the team. It depends on the need. Typically, when I talk with a company that is looking to solve a problem, they're like, who do I hire to solve this problem? I usually tell them to hire someone who's just very smart, but not that skill set, not the skill set they're looking for. They're trying to work on an engineering problem. I tell them, don't hire an engineer, hire an architect. They're looking at an architect problem, don't hire an architect, hire an artist. Because you want someone who's very good at what they do, whatever it is that they do, be very good at it, but not have any subject matter experience in that subject area. Why? Because typically, if you're working on an engineering project, if you're working on a legal problem, you have all these experts that have come from the same background. It's the lack of diversity. So I usually look to create a very diverse team. And that's all diversity, literally all diversity, whether it's sexual orientation, whether it's ethnic background, whether it's education, socioeconomic status. I literally look to get a very diverse team because it's important. Diversity brings cross-pollination of ideas. If you have 5 Puerto Rican guys like myself that are all MDs working on the same problem, we're all going to look at it from like 5 guys from Puerto Rico that have MDs. But you bring in someone from Japan who comes from a very completely different background, and studied philosophy and is a female, that actually is way more valuable to solve my problem at the end of the day. That will be way more valuable than if I brought someone else in with my same skill set. So I look for very smart people, but with very diverse backgrounds. Does that help?
Yeah.
And if anyone is interested in working on any projects, give you my card. Happy to try to bring you on, whether it's research or anything else that you would like to do. Anything else? Thank you for your time.
You're still going to die. It's not like you need to move forward.
But you're, like, if you don't know what you're doing,
It's just, proper sanitation. With proper sanitation, we're beginning to live.
That's so different.
What I'm saying is, like, it's not like it's not like we're young. But
that's exactly the, like, that's the mindset. The idea of why you die is so